Good morning. I'm Harley Schlanger from the LaRouche organization, and this is our daily video update for August 9th, 2024. It was 50 years ago today that Richard Nixon held a press conference to announce his resignation as president. There's an interesting column out by Roger Stone today, which says that Nixon knew that the CIA was involved in the coup, which toppled his presidency. So some things don't change very much over the years. Now, today is also the anniversary of another very significant event in history. 79 years ago, the United States dropped the second atomic bomb on Japan, on the city of Nagasaki, killing 40,000 people immediately, while another 30,000, it's estimated, died within a year from exposure to the blast. The Nagasaki commemoration is the backdrop for today's meeting of the International Peace Coalition. As we're facing a world in crisis, that we could have events which by accident or intention could put us on the verge of a nuclear war. So I have a special guest with me this morning to talk about what can be done to change the strategic direction away from war, away from confrontation, and toward mutual cooperation for the benefit of all nations. The guest is Anastasia Battle. She's someone I've known for a number of years. She actually is she's been the moderator, I think, for every one of the events of the International Peace Coalition, which takes place every Friday. And I think we're now up to 60 or 61 of these.
63.
63. Okay, I'm
Yeah.
behind this. And it was launched by Helga Zepp-LaRouche. Anastasia's worked very closely with her. And so she's going to give us a sense of what the IPC is and what can be done with it. So Anastasia, welcome to the Daily Update.
Thank you, Harley. Thank you for having me on. And we have known each other for a long time, going back to the LaRouche Youth Movement out in Los Angeles, California. And it was always a pleasure to be part of the discussions and classes that you would give there.
Well, that was when you were a youth and I wasn't so youthful even back then. Well, let's start with what is the International Peace Coalition and how would you define its mission?
Well, Helga, myself, we also had Nick Brana and a number of other people from Rage Against the War Machine. We initially founded the International Peace Coalition with the idea of unifying the peace movement, that we needed to break out of this ridiculous wall that's been going on between all the different groups, which, as you know, and many of us know, these are FBI operations to prevent people from working with one another. How do you sabotage the peace movement from actually being potent and creating true peace? So we sought out from the very beginning to find people who were principled, who wanted to unify the peace movement despite their ideology, left, right, up, down, whatever. It doesn't matter what your political, spice is, but are you actually committed to saving humanity? And we're on the verge of thermonuclear World War III. And a year ago, when Helga, myself, and others created this group, it felt like that was the closest we've ever come to nuclear war. And I can't believe I'm saying this, but we're even closer now to thermonuclear war than we were a year ago.
And as I understand it, the idea of the broad base is one part of it, the bringing in people from, ignore left and right. I mean, the way people get manipulated is they think, well, socialists are for peace and right-wingers are for war. And what we're finding is that there are unique human characteristics which would like to see humanity survive. And so you have a broad base, but it's also international in scope, isn't it?
Yes, exactly. It's international. We've had 43 or 45 different nations, people from 45 different countries in Asia, Africa, South America, North America, Europe, from all over the place, who've been getting on. And we have translation into German, English, French, and Spanish. So we've been able to accommodate not only speakers, but people who are attending, so that way everyone can hear people in the peace movement from all around the world. And I think that's actually what makes this incredibly potent, is that we're able to do that.
And what actually goes on in the calls?
So we bring on a number of different leading individuals in the beginning of the meeting, top military people, retired military people, former officials, activists, interventionists, leaders of different peace groups to speak as to what they're doing, what's happening in the world. Helga Zepp-LaRouche often goes through a really intense strategic political overview. And then we have a dialogue over how do we create true peace? How do we unify our different groups and coordinate throughout the world in order to create the maximum amount of impact? So we'll have events, we'll have demonstrations, we'll have petitions, various initiatives that we endorse. And this is all coordinated through the International Peace Coalition to create this pulsating intervention on the world to all collide together.
And you use the word dialogue. It's clear that not everyone agrees on everything when they get on the call, but there's actually an ongoing discussion process where people can feel free to bring up their disagreements or their concerns. Is that right?
Exactly. No, the number one priority that we have, in fact, this is really for your concept of joining the International Peace Coalition. We don't care, what your ideology is, but are you committed to what's truthful? Because if you're that kind of principled person and you're committed to the truth, then it's not going to bother you when somebody disagrees with you. You're going to have a discussion to figure out what is truthful. And then you'll change the way you think about something because you know that truth is far more valuable than holding on to your little assumption that you had about how the world works. And so this has come up many times, and many people who have joined the group with various discussions or disagreements, we've been able to come to a higher understanding. And I think that that's actually how this is what Helga talks about with the coincidence of opposites, of how we're going to have this dialogue process generally throughout the world to create true peace.
And when you first started with this process, the main threat then was the proxy war of NATO against Russia and Ukraine. That's still at the near top of the list. But we've seen multiple triggers come into play, the potential of an Iran-Israel war, and the threats against China continue from NATO, the idea of global NATO. So as this is deepening, as you said, it's become, we're closer to nuclear war. The nuclear clock is moving closer to midnight. But are you finding out that there's now more awareness of the threat to humanity?
Yes, absolutely. Especially amongst people who are within the pro-Palestinian movement, because many of the people that I've found within these groupings have not been political before. They've never been political. They're not very educated about what's been happening. Some of them were fooled by Kamala Harris, and they were like hopeful that she, would be something else, which that's obviously not true, especially given the fact that, I don't know if you saw this, Harley, but just yesterday, Kamala Harris attacked pro-Palestinian protesters at her demonstration or at her rally in Michigan, where they were saying we need a ceasefire now, we need to stop the genocide. And she yelled at them and told them that you need to stop or else you're going to get Trump elected. And a lot of the groups that I've been talking to who had been hopeful about her or maybe were capitulating around the Democratic Party in order to stop a genocide, this was their reasoning, are realizing that this is not the case. You cannot do that. You actually have to stand on principle and fight for what's truthful. So I think there's an education process that's happening. We need to be there and have these types of meetings available for people to come into so we can rapidly get them into a process of organizing at this higher level.
And this principle of dialogue, we had a rally in Berlin on last Saturday, and the signs, a lot of the signs said dialogue, not weapons. And I think this point of being able to talk things through is crucial. Now, Helga has recently proposed what she calls a council of reason. Elder or senior statesmen and stateswomen, people who are beyond the stage of ego and ambition. How would you see this, and what's the whole idea behind the Council of Reason?
So Helga put this forward a few weeks ago with the idea that, look, we've reached a point with the situation in Ukraine and the situation in Palestine that we have to find the people in the world who actually know how to create a true diplomatic process. And if you look at the way diplomacy is being done right now, it's basically just brutality and beating up nations until they submit. That's not diplomacy. It's almost like a lost art, quite frankly. So we've been seeking out people who are within the peace movement, former military, former presidents of nations, former congressmen, to join this committee, this Council of Reason, so they can put together the necessary policies in order to create peace, in order to create these diplomatic discussions that are necessary. Otherwise, we just do not see the people in the world right now who have the capacity to do that. They're very few and far between in an official capacity.
Now, when I talk to people about the Council of Reason, the first thing they say is, that's a great idea. Who are you going to get? And I tell them that the whole question that they're missing is the process of getting other people involved. Because if you get someone who's a good person, someone who is a senior statesman and knows something about the world, if you just call them and say, I'm calling you to join a Council of Reason, it may be a little difficult to get them to understand what you're saying. But as I understand it, Helga's idea is we need more people who are seeking out people who will be part of the Council of Reason. Is that accurate?
Absolutely. No, it's LaRouche always talked about this concept of the weak forces, right? He called them the weak forces. If you look at, for instance, cosmic radiation or something like that, it's a very weak force, but over a period of time, it can literally move mountains. It can literally change evolutionary processes. And what the LaRouche movement has always been exceptionally well at doing is to create that dynamic process to create good things to happen. And that's this Council of Reason. You view that as an intervention within these layers of diplomatic processes, recruiting and organizing these people to whether it's to step out of their cynicism or frustrations or fixations on different things, and get them to organize other people to see things in a different way so we can come to the table. I mean, just imagine, from our standpoint, we've had a year with the IPC, we've had almost 1,400 people on this meeting who have come off and on of participating in it. Imagine the kind of effect that's had with all these different people recruiting people, and it's growing and growing and growing, and it's snowballed. That's the same kind of process you can create at this higher level.
And I think in her mind, Helga is equating this with a modern day Peace of Westphalia, where you had actually it took 3 years to reach agreements, so we don't have that much time. But the idea that the dialogue process brought people from warring factions in Europe to come to the conclusion that if they didn't find peace, there'd be no one left in Europe. So what's on the agenda for the meeting tomorrow? Or I'm sorry, today.
So we're going to have a lineup of very excellent people, a few surprises, which I won't tell you right now, but you should definitely hop on and hear them. But we will have Larry Wilkerson, former Colonel Larry Wilkerson, who was the chief of staff to Colin Powell. He's been excellent in going after the danger of thermonuclear war. He just did a press conference with the Schiller Institute and Scott Ritter and Colonel Richard Black in DC. We're going to have Ray McGovern, who's the co-founder of Veterans for Peace and Veterans Intelligence Professionals for Sanity. He's been an absolute gem of a person in stopping world war. He's been an incredible peace activist and an interventionist, someone who's not scared to stand up and speak truth to power. Steve Leeper, this is just another example. Steve Leeper, who's the former president of Mayors for Peace, which this is the organization that is located actually in Nagasaki, I believe. And he'll be speaking that day at a rally, but he's going to make the time to hop on and speak at our meeting as well. And we'll have some other surprises, which we want you all to hop on and be part of.
Well, and this is actually not just a discussion process. It's actually a building of a force that can intervene. And I think the establishment is very fearful of this kind of process. Typical of that is the fact that they raided Scott Ritter's home yesterday. We don't know exactly what the whole thing is about, but the fact that Scott is very outspoken, he's participated in the IPC, and we certainly wish him well, but I don't think this is going to stop him. Do you?
No, no. And you can find his statement that he put out where he was very fiery about the whole situation, him and his wife. God bless you both for your strength in standing up to this. But they did seize his phone and his laptop. It's a form of harassment. It truly is. And this is coming off his meeting with RFK Jr., and he's been organizing and meeting with various other leading people in the United States to stop World War III. He has that same principle that we're talking about, right? He disagrees with RFK Jr. on Israel. Scott Ritter does, but he's willing to meet with Kennedy in order to talk with him and organize him, saying, hey, we need to stop thermonuclear war, organize with us to do this. So this is an incredibly important person. Scott Ritter is an incredibly important person in this process and being able to organize really top leaders in the United States and abroad.
Now, how do people participate in the call? And what time is it? And if they can't make it live, since this is Friday morning and the call's in a couple of hours, is it archived?
We'll have a discussion with the leadership of the group on publishing the video archive. We want to protect people's privacy, and as you know, there's been lots of harassment, and we've had harassment on the call, which we want to protect people from. So we'll keep you posted on how much of the video will be available after the fact. But if you want to join, I'll make sure to give you a link, Harley, which you can put here for people to RSVP to the meeting to get the Zoom link. And this will be Friday at 11 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time, 5 p.m. Central European Time. And if you're an organizer, if you are for peace, truly join this meeting. Share it with your friends, share it with your organizations, get it out as broadly as possible. We want to make this 1,000-person meeting. That's the cap actually for the webinar feature on Zoom that we have. So we want to hit that cap. We want to make this the largest meeting that we've had ever for this process. And there's going to be tons of events and organizing going on Nagasaki Day as well. So we'll get lots of reports, and we want to hear from you.
Well, Anastasia, thanks a lot for what you're doing with this, and thank you for coming on this morning to talk to people about it. And I'll make sure that if you send me the link, I'll post it so people can have that. I'll also post the report from last week's meeting, which goes through some of the discussion around the Council of Reason. So hopefully we'll see you in a couple of hours.
Thank you.